Welcome to Turning Back the Pages, the podcast where usually children's book authors discuss their favorite childhood books. This month, however, I'm talking to artists about their favorite art found in children's books. Today, artist Amy Grimes is joining me to discuss the art in The Maggie Bee by Irene Haas. As a child, fairy tales and fantastic illustrations captivated Amy's mind and sparked her passion for beautiful artwork and writing. Over the years, she has created various kinds of art, but her favorite pieces are those inspired by stories. She has illustrated 2 of her own children's books as well as several books by other authors, and she writes a quarterly column for Cultivating Oaks Press. She believes artwork that reflects goodness and truth can bring light into people's lives, encouraging them and giving them hope. Her inspiration comes from long walks, rambling prayers, starry skies, and dreamy fairy tales. She enjoys a quiet life with her husband in a house full of treasured books and bright colors. A sleek black cat and 2 very silly bird dogs keep her company each day while she paints. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, you have chosen The Maggie Bee to talk about today. And so before we get started, I am going to get you to recap the book for us for anyone who has not read the story. I am going to challenge you to see if we can do it in 30 seconds. And just for people to be able to follow along with the story. And if you're ready, I will start the clock.
Okay, great.
Okay, 3,
Maggie
2, 1.
Bee is about a little girl named Margaret who wishes on the North Star to sail on the sea for a day in her own ship with someone nice for company.
Perfect. And it is just a lovely story. There is very little online about the author. I searched a good bit this weekend and found very little about her life. So usually I like to give a big recap on things that the author did, but we're working with very little. So this is what we do know, what I could find. And if you know more, I would love to hear. According to her publisher, she was an outstanding artist who wrote and illustrated a number of children's books. She was born and raised in New York City. She had a childhood fascination with intricately detailed illustrations, which is evident in her award-winning picture books for children. She was married for 52 years to Philip Clark, and they had 2 children and a few grandchildren. She passed away in April 2013. She wrote and illustrated 3 of her own books and illustrated many more. The New York Times named A Little House of Your Own the best illustrated children's book of the year in 1955, and Was It a Good Trade in 1956. She has also made the Horn Book Honor List for many illustrated books. The Maggie book, the book that Amy has chosen, was released in 1975. So tell me what drew you to this book and to this artwork.
Well, my mom first read it to me when I was really little. I can't even remember a time before I knew this book. And I think that the thing that I loved so much about it was that it had that sense of home. Like it made you feel cozy and warm. And I loved the colors, all the colors in the book, and the expressions on the little girl's face, and even just the idea of having your own little boat and also wishing on a star and all of that. I loved all of it.
There were aspects of the book. I had not read the book, and so I read it this weekend with my children, and there were aspects of it. I don't know if you read Mandy by Julie Andrews.
I think I did, but I didn't read it like a long time ago. I read it not so long ago. Yeah.
I read that one as a child, and it had it was very different. That one is a chapter book, but it had a very similar feeling of taking care of your own space, and very whimsical in that way. It kind of reminded me of that a little bit. But this was my first time to read it.
Yes, I loved it. I read it so many times. My mom read it to me, and then I read it over and over and over again to myself.
I love that. What stood out to you as you read this as a child?
I love the way she took care of her little brother in the story. And I loved that feeling of there were things going on that boat that would never really normally happen. You know, she had a whole garden
Hmm.
in the top of the boat, and so when she gets ready to make this big stew, she pulls the fish and everything from the sea in a net, but then she also goes and picks oranges and apples and vegetables, and she has like all kinds of things. She has a goat and she has a toucan, and it's just the whole thing was such a joy. And I, as a child, because of this book, I used to pretend my bed was a boat. And every time it stormed, I would tie scarves and things like that onto the bedpost
Hmm.
and pretend the bed was a boat. And I would pretend to fish off the side of the boat and everything. And I would make believe. And then when I had two little girls, when I grew up, I have the same book. It's the same copy
Oh,
from when
I
I
love
was,
it.
and I read it to my girls and told them about what I used to do, and then it just carried on the tradition. They both did that. My youngest continued to do it for so long. Every time it stormed, she would go up to our guest bedroom bed, and I even had a bunch of drawer like I collected scarves
Uh-huh.
and put them in this one drawer in the guest bedroom specifically so that they could tie them to the bed and make it into a boat. So
I
yeah.
love that. That's fantastic. That sounds like something I would have done as a child. Did any of the art stand out to you as a child?
Well, definitely. I loved the way that she used patterns.
Hmm.
It's the same things that stand out to me now, but now I've had a lot of time to think about exactly why it
Hmm.
stood out, you know.
Hmm.
But well, I know that what I was loving, she put so much all in one page.
Yes.
The pages are not like where there's a lot of emptiness and then one individual thing. It's so many things in the picture, but they all feel like they belong. It feels like a cluttered room that you wouldn't really want to unclutter
Hmm.
because all the patterns, the wallpaper, the fabric on the curtains, the little girl's robe, everything is got these beautiful patterns that somehow feel like they are right together.
Hmm.
And I love that. I love the way that in the first page, you know, her bed is unmade. The room is kind of got toys scattered everywhere. And I also love the way that she exaggerates size in her
Hmm.
book. Like anytime she's got, if it's a flower in a vase, the flower is way bigger than any flower you've ever seen. The fruits and vegetables on the boat are way bigger than what they would be. But
Hmm.
all of it, it's like she's telling you what to look at,
Hmm.
what to pay attention to. And as a child, it felt almost like I could practically smell the
Hmm.
smell of the stew
Hmm.
cooking, or the ovens coming out of I'm not the muffins coming out of the oven,
Hmm.
or the smell of the sea. And I also love the way that she had warm colors in all the indoor scenes,
Hmm.
and then would have these bright, happy colors outside when they're having this good day together, she and her little brother. But then the darker colors for the storm. So
Hmm.
it always felt like this contrast, but all of it was leading back to this feeling of safety and
Hmm.
home. Like when it gets stormy outside and then she goes back in, then there's this cozy scene
Hmm.
that feels really warm in the ship, in the
Hmm.
cabin of the ship.
Hmm. Yeah, it did the all the inside scenes. I see what you're saying. They're very warm and homey, and I can imagine myself being in that place and feeling at home there. And I love the messiness and the untidiness of the rooms, like you mentioned. It definitely did give a sense of realness to it. I mean, that's definitely, it seems like art imitating life there.
Yes, I love that.
How has reading this book changed through the years for you?
Well, it's changed in that it was so fun when I got older and I read the book to my girls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a way, it stayed the same. I felt exactly the same way about it. But to see them hear the story and to be delighted
Mm-hmm.
the same way that I was and
Mm-hmm.
be inspired, like I told them about how I made the bed into the boat, but I didn't ask them to do that or
Yeah.
anything. They immediately took that. And I think that it's the kind of book that makes you want to imitate
Yes.
for sure what's going on. And the way that the little girl, there's so much joy in preparing the meal. And I'm not a cook, like I don't love cooking things, but I
Mm-hmm.
do love cooking soup. And as
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the book today, I thought, I wonder if that's why. It's like the only thing I like to cook is soup, and she cooks soup in this. So
That's really funny.
yeah, but I guess it has changed in the sense that it has become kind of a guide for me. I keep this book in my art studio
Mm-hmm.
and I look at it for color.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way that Irene Haas knew how you could mix all these colors together. And, if you mix the wrong colors, it feels jumbled and
Mm-hmm.
it's disturbing to look at. She
Mm-hmm.
knew exactly the right ones to use together. So I refer to her book a lot for color composition.
Mm-hmm.
And I also look at it to help me with that. I have a tendency to make things. I used to do portraits
Mm-hmm.
before I did illustrations. So the tendency to make things realistic
Mm-hmm.
um, is always there. And I don't actually like that. I like the
Uh-huh.
way she did it. I like the way she exaggerates things. So I
Mm-hmm.
look at it to help me remember the rules that can be broken
Right.
and the rules that when you break them, the book is actually better.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very instructive to me now.
Yeah.
And as a child, it was more just joyful imagination.
Right. A couple of things about that. When I was looking at the pictures in the book, um, even though your styles are different, I could see I think it's the colors. There's something about your paintings that I've seen and then what I was seeing in hers that they're not alike, but I could see how you could pull inspiration from her, especially in the colors. And then back to how you were saying, like, it's sharing this book with your girls. Has you never told them like to play turn their bed into a boat, but books like this have such a power to invite us to play. I think the books that have stayed classics and beloved for so long are the ones that have such a good story. Like it's just story that's beautiful. It's an invitation to play, and it's something that is so human about us to want to play like that. I've seen especially my oldest daughter. I have two girls. My oldest daughter really enjoy hearing how I interacted with books that I loved because it's almost like her way to connect not only with the story but with me, and
Wow.
it's just that generation after generation engaging in play and story, and there's something about story that lives beyond just us. I think in this I can see how this story would be one that will last for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and when I've shared about the Maggie Bee on Instagram a few times, like in my
Mm-hmm.
stories, I've had people send messages to me and say, I did that same thing. So finding that there are other people, probably about my age, who also loved this book
Uh-huh.
and make believe about a boat.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really, really fun to see.
That's fun. How does art help tell this story?
Well, I think, like I was saying about the colors, the way that she uses warm and cool colors and then dark, kind of where it gets gloomy with the storm.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one conflict in the story,
Mm-hmm.
and it's very brief and it's a storm. But in the stormy scene, she changes everything from those warm and then the clear, cheerful colors to the dark and gloomy colors. And then, and back when she gets back inside the the boat, she's back surrounded by those warm colors again. I think that she really tells the story well that way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also a lot of movement and expression, the wind, and even the way that the animals that are in the story reflect the emotion. You know, the toucan who looks like he's distressed during the storm, and everybody's all calm during the day, and when they get back in the boat, and so I love that. And there's a picture of her where she's sweeping the deck of the boat, and she looks like she's singing, but everything feels like there's motion. Her hair and her scarf and her apron, everything is sort of flying out to the side, you know, so there's always this wind and motion and joy in the pictures.
And do you have a favorite illustration in the book?
I do. I had to think about it because I really love a whole lot of them. I can tell you that my favorite one as a child was the one where she's out on the deck of the boat, and this is where she's in that garden. There's a garden on top of the boat, and she's painting a picture. There's an easel and her little paintbrush and palette, and she's painting a picture of her little brother who's asleep. He looks like he's little bitty, like 1 year old. And he is, and there's also like a little hen house, and there's so much going on. And the goat and the apple tree and the orange tree and all these wildflowers, all this is taking place on the top of the boat. So this is during the real peaceful part of the story. And I loved that as a child. And I think it was because I definitely wanted to go there.
Yeah.
I wanted to be there. Also, I loved drawing, and this little girl was painting in the picture. And all those patterns, and it made you want to see inside the boat. It felt like that could really happen. And of course, later when I was, you know, I got to be on a boat at one point, and it really wasn't that much like that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, but it really looked like a lot of fun.
Oh, that's funny. Which one is your favorite now?
So now looking at it, and then it was also one of my favorites, but I probably would have been between that one and this one that I'm about to say. I love this one where she's just given her little brother a bath, and she's got him wrapped up in this white fluffy towel, and she looks like she's maybe singing to him or talking to him. She's holding him kind of up high, and it's right before dinner, and you've just seen her preparing this wonderful dinner from the sea and from her garden. And it's the coziest picture because you can see what it looks like outside of the boat, and the storm and the waves are still going. So it's really dark and gloomy and ominous outside of the boat, but inside everything is safe. And of course, unlike a real boat, it doesn't look like they're swaying or they're not being tossed by these waves. They're just, everything's fine. And so it feels like the whole book is sort of it's like a lullaby. You know, it's the kind of thing that would say, you're going to be all right.
Yeah.
You know, everything's okay. You're safe. And that's what the whole book feels like. But that particular picture especially says that.
Oh, I really like that. That has a whole spiritual aspect to it as well. Just, you know, even though everything outside is chaos and, you know, we're kept safe. And I really like that. Turning Back the Pages is sponsored by bookshop.org. Okay, no, not really, but let's talk about bookshop.org. Bookshop.org works to connect readers with independent booksellers all over the world. Every purchase on the site financially supports independent bookstores. I've chosen my local independent bookstore, Thank You Books, for when I purchase a book from bookshop.org. And Turning Back the Pages has its own shop. All the books discussed on the show can be found on the show list at the store. To find out more, you can click on the link in the show notes. Or, if you wanted to do it the hard way, Google bookshop.org and search for Turning Back the Pages under the shop search on the website. Happy shopping, happy reading. Why do you think that one draws you now versus what drew you as a child? What drew you in?
I think it's exactly what you're saying. I think that it does remind me of what God does. That it doesn't mean that you don't have these storms or these really hard things, and that you don't always know why or whatever, but that you're always in Him,
Mm-hmm.
that there's safety in Him, and that you always have a home,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what's going on, that
Mm-hmm.
there's a home in Him and it's steady
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't go up and down with the waves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think all of that really speaks to me. And, and also I look at it and I love those patterns
Yeah.
and I love those colors. So I think, I think all of that.
That's lovely. How has this art inspired you in your own art?
Well, it's helped me definitely with color and with composition, like how I arrange the pictures. I refer to it, every book that I've ever done as far as picture books,
Mm-hmm.
every picture book I've done, I refer to this book at some point.
Okay.
I referred to it for when I did illustrations for Ann Voskamp's book, Your Brave Song, and it
Uh-huh.
shows pictures inside the little girl's room. And
Mm-hmm.
even though the pictures inside her room don't look like the pictures inside the Maggie B children's, the little girl's room, I did refer to it. I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at it because I loved the way that Irene didn't worry about the what do you call it? The perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like the perspective of the bed, you're looking straight at it, but she's got it sort of tilted this one way. The chair is tilted
Mm-hmm.
another way, and everything's tilted different directions. So
Mm-hmm.
if you were really doing this according to perspective, like accurately, it would never
Mm-hmm.
look like this.
Right.
But it also wouldn't be anywhere close to this wonderful. So
Yeah.
she tilts everything the way it needs to be, arranged so that you get a good look at everything. So
Yeah.
she doesn't worry about whether the table really would be tilted like that.
Mm-hmm.
She tilts it that way so you can see everything sitting on top of it. And I just loved the way she did that. So I tried to pay attention to that
Mm-hmm.
when I was illustrating Una Rain's room. And I did the same thing in my story, Lucilla and the Snarly Skein. Just tried to don't worry too much about the perspective. Make sure people see what you want them to see. And I'm still learning. Irene Haas was she was a master at
Yeah.
her illustrations. She did watercolor, and I
Mm-hmm.
do acrylic illustrations.
Mm-hmm.
But I do always look at her artwork and really marvel at the way that she designed everything. And I always wonder, did she look at photographs? Is this
Mm.
just all in her imagination? So
Yeah.
it's pretty amazing.
Is it hard to ignore, I'm using quotes, ignore the rules, quote unquote, like perspective when you are doing art, and how do you get over which rules to break and which ones really help create the art? Does that question make sense?
Yes, it is hard for me. Some people probably have an easier time with it. I Once I have established what I'm going to paint, like once I've sketched something and I've
Mm-hmm.
got it, then it's not hard anymore because then
Mm-hmm.
I'm really copying my sketch. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of filling it in and
Mm-hmm.
making it look right. But the original sketch, I have I'm really torn a little bit because a part of me, most of me just wants it to be this beautiful illustration.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a natural tendency to make things accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And those are not the same thing. Like an
Right.
illustration and an accurate picture are not the same thing. And actually, the ones that get closer to accurate, I personally don't like as well. So some people do, but
Mm-hmm.
I love the exaggerated. I love the things that have a whole lot of character,
Mm-hmm.
that took a lot of liberty
Mm-hmm.
on all kinds of things. So when I'm doing my artwork, I have to intentionally try to break rules.
Mm-hmm.
And certain ones I'm used to breaking, so those I don't even have to think about anymore. Like the way that I draw children that's lots of broken rules, but I
Mm-hmm.
established that a long time ago, so that is not difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm working on pictures inside of a room, then and I don't have as much experience with that, I'm more likely to be looking at actual pictures of a room.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to want to accidentally draw it exactly like that. And that's not what I want. So
Uh-huh.
then that's why I look at things like the Maggie B. I also look at books by Gaio Fujikawa. I never know if I'm saying her name correctly, but she did tons of wonderful artwork, and she was always ignoring rules.
Uh-huh.
So I look at it, and I even say to myself, Gaia Fujikawa made the cat way too big to be in that house, really. Like when you look at it from the outside, the cat looks really big. You
Mm-hmm.
know, the dog looks small. There's all kinds of things going
Mm-hmm.
on that don't make sense, but it was wonderful. So I
Mm-hmm.
remind myself, this is wonderful. This is what I'm trying to do.
Right.
And I will intentionally break rules.
I like that. Would little Amy be surprised that you're an artist?
No, not at Little Amy would have been very surprised if I had not been an artist. I always thought, I mean, I don't know if I ever thought of what I was going to be. When I was really little, I thought I was going to be a rabbit. So
Oh, well.
if you get little enough, I would have been surprised that I didn't become a rabbit. But once I was old enough to understand about what people could and couldn't become, I would have been very surprised if I had
Mm-hmm.
not become an artist, because that's what I did all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That and stories. I loved stories, but I think I might have been surprised that I had enough, that I could sit long enough
Mm.
to write a whole story.
Yeah.
Because, for some reason with the art, I can sit forever and ever and ever. And with stories, it's shorter.
Yeah.
But I love both pretty much equally.
Well, tell me about your books that you have written and illustrated.
So I've done a couple of books, and then I've illustrated a lot of books. So the
Mm-hmm.
two that I've written are And the Light Comes In.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I wrote and illustrated it, and I wrote and illustrated Lucilla and the Snarly Skein.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only two that I have written and illustrated. And then I've illustrated quite a few. I made a list of a few of them so that I would remember what all they were. I did Voyage to the Star Kingdom. I helped with the storyline for that. And then Anne Riley wrote all of it, and then I did illustrations for it. And then I did illustrations for Your Brave Song by Anne Voskamp. And then I very recently did illustrations for The Girl Whose Frown Shook the Ground by Melody Troll.
Mm-hmm.
And I loved doing those. That
Yeah.
is a wonderful story, and was so excited to get to do it. And then I did the covers for Emma Fox's books, The Arrow and the Crown and The Carver and the Queen. And I
Yeah.
loved doing those.
That's
So,
fun. I've met Emma. I'm in Birmingham as well, and she is an Owl's Nest author, and I do the Owl's Nest podcast as well.
Oh, wonderful.
So
I didn't realize that you were in Birmingham.
yeah. So yeah, I got to have tea with Emma one time, and she is a delight.
She is.
What is the process of illustrating any book like?
For illustrating a book, first I have to have everything broken up into pieces so that I can see which words are going to go on which page.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I look at it, I remember what I loved as a child when I looked at picture books.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like it if they stayed in exactly one place
Right.
for a really long time. I would have been really uninterested in that. I liked a lot of movement.
Mm-hmm.
So I want in a picture book, if you are going to be in one place for a long time, then it needs to be showing it from different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Maggie B, the whole thing is on a boat. It's the same boat, but it's showing you different parts of the boat, different angles. Sometimes it's close up. You see a close up of the people. Sometimes they're far away. So I do that. I try to keep that in mind. I try to show like little vignettes where you've got some pages where you see mostly the white background and then little vignettes, because that also is kind of keeps it interesting. And then I show something close up, and then something farther away. And then I also try to make sure that I have motion in every picture, make sure something's actually doing something. Like even if it's a mother talking to a child, have birds that are flying by, you know, just something that makes you see a story moving.
Right.
I also like it if there are other things creating a secondary story in the pictures that are not mentioned in the book. So like in Your Brave Song, I have kind of a secondary story going on with Mother Robin and her little baby birds that it never mentions. I don't think it ever mentions a robin in that book, but the story of the mother robin and the baby robins goes from the beginning to the end of that book. You keep seeing, because as a child I loved that. A lot of the time I latched on more, or at least equally, to the secondary stories being told in the books. So I try to do that. So I sketch. I sketch all of that. And then once I get that approved, then I start illustrating it, painting it, and I'll choose, I paint it out of order. I never paint it from the beginning to the end.
Okay.
Because the more I paint, I get a little bit better. You know, I'm still improving. People kind of just continue to work on their craft, you know, their writing or their artwork, and they are better at the end of a book than they are at the beginning. So I don't really want you to be able to tell that I got better. That's not the point of the story. So what I do is I choose a difficult painting, and then I choose an easy painting, and then a difficult painting and an easy painting. And I go all over the place with it.
That's cool.
And hopefully whichever illustration was my favorite ends up being the best, but it doesn't always. So that's kind of the way that I go. And I have all of the sketches up in front of me, and I start crossing them out. Like I'll have it kind of copied so that it's on my wall. And it's all sitting there, and I kind of have a plan of how many days it's going to take me on each of these, just a guess. And I follow that so that I can make sure I have everything turned in on time.
Right.
But I cross out my sketches as I go so that I can see how many have I got left, how many days have I got left. And I like to be ahead of time or right on time, because I know artists are known for being late. And I am definitely a forgetful type of a person, but I am never late. I want to be dependable.
Right.
So I make sure of that.
That's fantastic. Will you share where people can follow you or buy any of your books or anything else that you want to promote?
You can follow me on Instagram at @AmyGrimes_story paintings.
Great.
And I'm on Facebook supposedly, but I'm never in there, so that's not going to help. And Threads, I'm never there either, so only Instagram. And then you can also find me at if you want to look at other artwork and original paintings and books, my website is storypaintings.net.
Okay.
And I have a weekly encouraging email that I send out that you can subscribe to. Oh, and I meant to tell you about my scripture cards. I've got scripture cards that it's 20 different illustrated scriptures that have just really whimsical illustrations set with some of my favorite scriptures.
I love that.
Get those on my website as well.
Fantastic. Well, I can vouch that Amy is a fun follow on Instagram. I've been following her since I've been at Owl's Nest and heard about her through Emma. So thank you for joining me in this episode of Turning Back the Pages. If you have any author or artist suggestions, please feel free to email me at whatallywrites@gmail.com. You can follow the show on Instagram or Twitter at whatallywrites. Allie isAlly. And don't forget to subscribe.